Warning: the following podcast contains violent scenes that may be unsettling to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to the Brian Book Club. It's been a while since we have done one of these. So today I kind of have an interesting book to talk about. It's not quite a horror book, but the story that is behind this book and the story that continues to follow this book to this day is somewhat tied into a real world horror, which I feel can be used as motivation for any storyteller or any player and a wide variety of Chronicles of Darkness or One World of Darkness games. So the book that we'll be talking about today is called In the Belly of the Beast, written by a guy named Jack Henry Abbott. It's actually called In the Belly of the Beast, Letters from Prison. I came across this book because, like many things, or many storytellers or many players, I'm sure, that play these games of ours, I'm always having ideas of different games and stories I want to run, depending on the game line, or just something will just get me down this rabbit hole where next thing I'm knowing, I'm like on Amazon, just one clicking away, buying books or just trying to find books, get book recommendations dealing with specific subjects. So an idea has been in my head for a while, rattling around, about running a story in a World of Darkness setting set in a prison. And, we've all seen countless lockup shows on MSNBC or on Netflix. You see them all the time, reruns all the time. And so I actually want to get into some books about the subject. To be frank, I find the prison subculture, to be fascinating at times. Not the violence or any of the bad stuff, but just how it's this own little ecosystem of its sort. So I went through this period where I was just buying books that I could find dealing with prison. Believe it or not, it's actually not an easy task to find good books that aren't self-published about prison. So what I did was I came across this book, In the Belly of the Beast. And usually what happens, a little behind the scenes, peek behind the curtain here, is I'll buy these books, I'll throw them in my bookshelf, and then when it's time for me to find a new book in my reading cycle, I'll just grab a book. I'll look, I'm like, oh, okay, this book. So I was looking at my bookshelf, and I had ordered this book in one of my rabid, mindless Amazon purchases, and I really didn't remember too much about the book. So I kind of glanced it over, and I got a little bit of information from reading the back of it, and I started reading it. And while reading this book, it kind of had me doing research about the guy who wrote it and a bunch of different things, which we'll be talking about. And it just opened my eyes, and I discovered all these other books and just kind of discovered how this one little book had an impact on so many people's lives. And those impacts, I feel, provide a wealth of inspiration that can be used for different World of Darkness games. So what's the book about? Well, it's not really it's not a fiction book, but it's not really a non-fiction book, I guess I would say too. So in 1980, around 1980, 81, I think, an author named Norman Mailer wrote a book called The Executioner Song, which I actually might do a Brian Book Club about, but it's a great book. It won a Pulitzer Prize, and it basically is a nonfiction book that tells a tale of a guy getting out of prison who spent a lot of his childhood and a lot of his adult time incarcerated, got out of the prison system, and basically it tells a story of him killing a couple people and then going back to prison. It's a really lengthy book, really good book, a book, matter of fact, that I'm in the middle of reading at this moment. Love the book. So the author, Norman Mailer, who wrote that book, was trying to get other sources from people, sources and of information about prison from prisoners who were currently incarcerated. So one gentleman he came across, and I use that term very loosely, was a guy named Jack Henry Abbott. And Jack Henry Abbott wrote these letters to Norman Mailer describing his experiences in prison. And these letters inspired Norman Mailer so much that he ended up collecting them into a book. And that's what In the Belly of the Beast is. Letters from Prison are these different letters that Jack Abbott wrote to Norman Mailer while helping him out on The Executioner Song. So once this book was published, Norman Mailer and a bunch of the beatnik authors at this time, like I said, it was in the early 80s, so they were older. These were authors who were popular during the 50s and 60s. But a bunch of celebrities and authors in New York City got behind this movement to get Jack Henry Abbott out of prison on probation, because they were saying he had a gift with words, and that he was basically this next modern day fascinating author, and that like if he got out of prison, he could leave this life of becoming an author and change his ways and so on and so forth. So there's this really big celebrity push to get him out of prison. Sound familiar? Seems like we see that oftentimes now with every new Netflix documentary series that comes out or podcast series where people now are getting pop culture people and people are getting behind trying to free certain individuals from prison. So this happened. He was able to get out on probation, even though people are parole, I think it's called, excuse me. He was able to get out of parole, and there was warnings. People said, "Hey, this man shouldn't be out. He's a dangerous man." But he got out. He got out anyway. So he went to New York City and became the toast of the town. All these famous people, these writers were like showing him off at these dinner parties, so on and so forth. And for like 3 or 4 weeks, this guy was just like a star. You know, he was being bragged about. He's being shown off. Well, one night he went into this diner like at 2 or 3 in the morning with two females, and he went in there and he wanted to use the employee only bathroom, and this waiter had to explain to him like, "Hey, you can't use that. That's the employee only bathroom. I'm sorry." And Jack Abbott stabbed the dude to death right there in the restaurant. Went on the run, was I think found on a drilling rig in Louisiana, and was arrested. And a bunch of people, frankly, had egg on their face. A bunch of celebrities had egg on their face because they said this guy was an animal. They said the criminal justice system was over exaggerating and was trying to hold him down. And he was an animal. He ended up representing himself in his own trial for that murder. Actually, Christopher Walken and I think it was Susan Sarandon came there and were trying to say that he should not be in prison because of his writing skills. But this is a man who like stabbed someone in cold blood murder in the middle of a restaurant at 3 a.m. in New York City just because he couldn't use the bathroom. Jack Abbott ended up killing himself. And I think like 10 years later, ended up killing himself. Tried to write another book, and the book didn't do well. And he's and I can't remember who it was, but one of the beatnik era writers who had like supported Jack Abbott actually killed himself not too long after Jack Abbott committed that murder. And a lot of people think it's tied to the embarrassment that he felt from backing someone like Jack Abbott and realizing that these people, him and his friends, had supported this cold-blooded murder just simply because they felt he wrote good, and that they were trying to look more enlightened. It was really crazy. And there's actually another book that was written by a gentleman named Jerome Loving called Jack and Norman that tells the story about the relationship between Jack Abbott and the writer Norman Mailer, and how like Norman Mailer pretty much had, like I said, egg on his face from this whole ordeal. So before I knew all this that had happened, I had started reading this book. And reading this book, to be blunt, while the guy has had a wonderful skill of writing and using words and really pulled you in with his letters, my bullshit detector went off from the start. You have to understand, this man was educated in the system. He had spent a lot of his time in the system. So, but my point being, why my bullshit detector went off is a lot of his stories just reeked of him over exaggerating or being a liar, and a lot of the shit that he was saying. And, you know, I just feel in life that I've come to the point in my life where I read something and I can kind of know when someone's being is just throwing around hyperbole. And that's what I felt from the start when I was reading this. Like and you have to understand, when reading this man, like I said, had been self-taught. So a lot of concepts he learned from reading in prison, but he never really had taught to him. And there's nothing wrong with being self-taught. I'm a lot of my life I was self-taught before I went to college as an adult. But you can tell by the terms and the naive ways that he throws around terms. And plus he frankly lies a lot, and he's a self-proclaimed communist, and there's nothing, I'm not getting into politics saying he's right or wrong, but just the way that you can tell that a lot of the things that he says in this book is to back up his political belief that he recently just discovered. And some of it is so out there. Like I'm not talking about just like common stories. Some of the stories are so out there that it doesn't make sense what he's saying. And that with even in the criminal justice system, which does have its issues, and prisons, which do have their issues, the stuff that he is saying is so outlandish that it makes you wonder why anyone was even so quick to believe this. And, you know, this man, the parole board was quick to warn some people on the parole board that this man was a monster. Like, he legitimately had been a problem prisoner. He had killed a man in prison. He was constantly like getting thrown and and segregation. He was constantly just a problem child. He wasn't good, but because of this huge like movement by these celebrities to get him out because of his writing skills, I don't know. I don't know how it all worked behind the scenes, but it was frankly, I'm flabbergasted to hear that happened. So a lot of you guys are probably at this point like, I'm tired of hearing you talk about this guy, talk about those. How is this going to help me run a World of Darkness game or play in a World of Darkness game? And all what I've just said has kind of been built up to that. So the one main thing is that this man was a sociopath. He was a sociopath. He was selfish. He was not a good person. He was an animal. A lot of these writers and actors who supported him after he killed apologized. They realized what they did. He had fooled them. He had conned them. And I think that is inspiration in itself when you read these letters, to read this book of letters, to see how people like him try to fool people like us. Oftentimes in these games of ours, these World of Darkness games, we know there's no really black and white, right? Like a lot of it's a gray texture, right? A lot of characters are gray, like a lot of PCs are gray, a lot of NPCs are gray. And I think there's a level of how darker or how lighter they go in that gray. And I think oftentimes in the medium of being like storytelling, a tabletop role-playing game, we have a hard time expressing how darker people can get by how they talk and how they communicate and what they try to do rather than the acts that they do. So what I'm trying to say is, you will have an NPC or a PC and this person's not a good person. And a lot of times in a storytelling medium, we are used to describing visuals and descriptors about what a person is. Frankly, when I first started running Twin Cities by Night, a lot of times I'll go back and I'll listen to our old stuff, and I will realize that I rely too heavy on descriptors and scenes and actions to get the horror across of how bad someone is. You can talk about like someone like for those of you who listen to our actual plays, the introduction of Roman Dunsern in the first arc, Negligence, is a prime example of that. I look back, I listen to that sometimes, like I could have handled that differently, maybe. I could have maybe built it up differently, whatever. But a lot of times there are bad people in this world that while they are setting up or doing bad things, we don't realize it, or they just simply are trying to manipulate people. We don't like really, we don't realize it because sometimes we are falling for what they are saying. And reading this book, I felt that I walked away. I mean, I didn't believe any of the bullshit that this guy said in the book, but I walked away with like, oh, now I feel that I can speak from the perspective in character of an NPC who is trying to fool people and make it believable. And a lot of people may be listening. It's like, oh, well, why can't you just have an NPC or a PC who just lies? Yeah, you can do that. I mean, there's liars who are, very great at lying and you think they're telling the truth or whatever. But this man in here is passionate. He wants to be a revolutionary. He wants to expose things, quote unquote, expose things in the criminal justice system. He wants to tell people who will never spend a day in the criminal justice system that he should be their trusted guide into what they see. And because he is that trusted guide to show them what is wrong, that he should get something in return. That's a very powerful thing. We see that constantly. People put their faith into a person. It could be religion, it could be government, it could be whatever. And they expect that person who has exposure to something in this world that they do not have to be telling them the truth about that on the other side. That injustice. In this case, Jack Abbott's talking about how fucked up the criminal justice system is. And I'm not saying there's no room for reform. There is, but like I said, the stuff that this man was saying was so outlandish, and people put their trust in him because he was good at writing and at prose. So I tell myself there's a lot of opportunities in World of Darkness games to do that. You can have just normal street level characters who do that, normal people who do that, right? You can have someone who's from maybe a lower income area trying to tell rich debutantes what is wrong and try to fleece them for money to fix that. But you can even do that in more of a cult-like behavior, because no matter what I think we all can agree that in different World of Darkness games, there's different kind of cultish aspects about certain things. If it's Vampire the Masquerade, it's like ghouling. Or if it's like Werewolf the Apocalypse, it could be, the tribal mentality, or just like kinfolk, or so on and so forth in different games. And so sometimes I think that while even, and I've been guilty of this too, as a storyteller, I'm going to have this guy who's a cult person who's in charge of some kind of cult or a group of people, but it's really hard to articulate how someone like that talks because we're really not exposed to that. I mean, you can watch movies, I guess, but we're really not exposed to that. So I feel that's one thing that this book can do is find you how a person like that communicates to people who they want to take advantage of and who are gullible and he's fired up and he has passion. He comes across passion there. So that's one way that you can do that. Now, when I was reading this also, I could not help but think of a great idea for like a Toreador in Vampire the Masquerade, like kind of like a Toreador story arc or whatever to show just like maybe take someone like a Jack Abbott character who has had this kind of, life and is used and flaunted around by like some Toreadors in kindred social circles in Vampire the Masquerade. They take this author and they know is murderous but has a good choice of words, and they show them to the friends and they want to get status and they want to show all this stuff, and then this guy ends up going and murdering someone in a restaurant over a public bathroom, and just like the egg that they would have on their face, and would just be like this whole political heartbeat game, which, to be honest, I've never really tried to tackle that in a Vampire the Masquerade story, any story that I've ran, because I have found that like it is complicated, and it's a complicated thing that I don't think I could tackle. But reading this, it makes me kind of want to try to tackle that in game. So you can almost say that this Brian Book Club could be like a 3-parter. It could be In the Belly of the Beast, written by Jack Henry Abbott. It could be the book The Executioner Song by Norman Mailer, and then finally, to wrap those 2 books up, you could read a book that was written just this year called Jack and Norman by Jerome Loving, and see how like someone with social status, a Pulitzer Prize writer, did so much to get this one person thinking it was going to elevate him, to show him that he took this person on the prison system and now they are this renowned writer, and it just failed horribly. Reputations were lost. I cannot stress enough that it is thought that someone, an accomplished writer, took their life after this because they were part of someone backing Jack Henry Abbott. So take it what you will. What I said here, check these books out if you want. I'm just telling you all folks how this is what I took away from reading this. And that's one thing that I love about the Brian Book Club, is I feel that I can share the inspiration that I get from different mediums. And I do feel in a way that this is a horror, like a little horror set of books, because in the end, someone lost their life because of a bunch of naive people, and because of one prisoner who knew he could take advantage of these people. And I think that is something that could really put almost like a real world feel into your games too. So if you'd like to reach us, you can find us on Twitter at twin_cities_VTM, or you can find us on Facebook at Twin Cities by Night. If you'd like to support us, you can find our Patreon link in the description of this podcast. We don't hide anything behind a paywall, but any little bit helps. Other than that, I'll talk to you all later.
Hello, folks. Have you ever wished you could have an easy way to find gameplay videos and podcasts, or just media in general that deals with your favorite White Wolf role-playing games? Or have you ever wished you could find a forum to share gameplay that you have recorded, one which wouldn't be drowned out by random posts and discussion, so that your media could get the attention you want? Well, we have the answer for you in a Facebook group we run called White Wolf RPGs Gameplay and Media. The group is specifically ran with the sole intent of it being a one-stop shop for people to view or share media involving the games we all love. We take thorough steps to ensure the page does not become cluttered and is easy to traverse. We are currently over 1,000 members strong, and we are continuing to rapidly grow, with new media being shared every day. Stop on by. We hope to see you there. High Level Games, the industry's first choice in taking your games to the next level. We are a podcast blog and new media network at highlevelgames.ca. We have blog posts about all of your favorite games going up 5 days a week, and a podcasting network with actual plays and shows that discuss role-playing games, with more rolling out all the time. We are on iTunes, Twitch, and YouTube. Find out more information at highlevelgames.ca, a site that certainly isn't controlled by a shadowy board of directors of otherworldly origin. That's highlevelgames.ca.
Please, help. They're coming.
The Los Angeles metropolitan area is constantly growing and changing. The Central District is full of new buildings. The Hollywood and Wilshire districts, once far from downtown, now are part of it which spreads past Beverly Hills and out to the ocean. But why is all this going on in Los Angeles? Why is Los Angeles an exploding city?
Neon Masquerade.
The Demon's Mirror.
13 Candles.
3 chronicles running through the undead veins of the City of Angels.
The Esoteric Order of Roleplayers Actual Play podcast invites you to drink deeply.
Go to eorpodcast.com and search the duets tag to find out more.